students first, and I've based my platform on the 5 main pillars of the University Affairs portfolio, namely being SMU internal regulations and policy, the equity portfolio, the Life Improvement Fund, the Faculty Academic Roundtable, and Senate representation. My goal in running is to help students have a voice on campus and to make sure that what they're saying is being listened to. Obviously, we have a long way to go after this year in rebuilding trust between students, SMU, and the university. I would do everything in my power to make sure that as a person in power and privilege, we also pass a parallel policy to the SVP within SMU, and that is also respected by other faculties. And I think that that's a great start. So there you go, Isabel.
Thank you. Before we continue, just if any of you are familiar with Model UN, one tap means you have 10 seconds left. And then I'll tap you out when you have no time left.
I just saw it happen. Wow, okay. Yeah. Hi, thanks for making it out, everyone. My name is Isabel, I go by she, and I'm currently the president of the Black Students Network and the VP Floor Fellow at the MU's part-time casual support staff student, or union on campus, sorry. So I'm currently studying poli-sci because advocacy is very important to me, and I also study linguistics because I really like Star Trek. So I hope that this debate will allow me to fully expand my platform, but I'm going to start with my opening statement talking about my 3 main points. So the first is campus outreach. Today I heard from a friend that in order to pass her class, she'll be required to pass every individual component of the class. And I know that this isn't allowed because some of the assignments in her syllabus are less than 20% and this is something that, according to policy, is not something you can have in a course structure. This is something that she wouldn't have known about had I read through all the student assessment policies on campus. And I think that is something, these kind of things affect all of us as students. So I think that in order to try and get the mandate of SMU to be more solid and more representative, we need to try and tap into these conversations between friends that never, that always bring up issues, but issues that never go up to the position of VP University Affairs. I'd also...
Sorry, we're out of time. Sorry, but you'll have plenty more time going forward. Just a reminder, it's for opening statements, it's 1 minute and 30 seconds. So when I give a tap, you have 10 seconds left. Yeah. But don't worry.
Okay, so hopefully the rest of my platform, or the rest of the debate, will be able to expand on it. Thank you.
For sure. Okay. So moving on, now we have the incumbent questions from the current VP University Affairs, Aaron Sobat. So he'll give the questions, and then you'll each get 1 minute to respond.
Hello. Great. So thank you both for being here. I just want to note that unfortunately not all of the incumbent SMU executives will be able to be here tonight to ask questions because it's also our legislative council meeting. But I wanted to start off with a couple of questions for each of you on your experience, starting with Alex. So I noticed in your platform you speak a lot about the committees that you sit on as a student senator this year. And I was wondering, what do you feel have been your most significant achievements as a senator?
I would say it varies depending on the committee because I've sat on 7. So for everyone who doesn't know, I sat on APC, UHSC, UTLWG, SLWG, MASEC, and PPETAC. I think one of the most impactful things I've done would be regarding the smoking policy on campus. I say that because at the meeting there was a lot of discord between unions, students, and the administration regarding moving that policy forward. And at the end of the day, I said, you know what, this is something that 75% of students of our student body has said, and administration as well, have said that they wanted. So I moved the motion, and it will be going to the P7 for recommendations later this March, and then the policy will be written by EHS for publication in May.
Thank you. One for Isabel. So as you know, Senate and its committees is one component of the VP University Affairs position. So how do you feel that your experience has prepared you for supporting the team of student senators and working in part through these university governance and policy channels?
So something I think, an experience that I've had that I think really prepared me, or will prepare me for this part of the portfolio is my work as the representative of floor fellows at the part-time casual support staff union on campus. This is because this job required me to have regular meetings with HR and like McGill in order to solve workplace problems that student workers were facing. I was also on the bargaining team for my union, which means that I was able to directly engage with policy and directly negotiate with the university. So it was real substantial experience that I think I will be able to bring into the position. Yeah, thank you.
So I have two more questions for both candidates. The first is, what are the greatest barriers to the accessibility of the McGill experience? And as VP University Affairs, how would you work to address these barriers?
Do you have yeah, okay, perfect. Okay, so I think there's a wide range of accessibility barriers on campus that often target different groups. So for example, the issue with overhead fees that you yourself have talked about has been a real obstacle for students with low socioeconomic status to succeed on campus. Also, the precarious labor that we see on campus is something that affects disproportionately lower class socioeconomic status students. Sorry. I think that in terms of accessibility in the classroom, we have issues with the type of education that this university thinks is accessible and lends to a higher quality education. I think that we've inherited an idea of what education should look like, but in reality doesn't lend itself to full appreciation and full growth with the information you're engaging with. So there's a lot.
Can you just repeat the question for me one more time?
Sure, I know it's a longer one. So what are the greatest barriers to the accessibility of the McGill experience? And if you have time, as VP University Affairs, how would you work to address these?
Well, there's a number of different components involved in when talking about accessibility issues on campus. You could talk about everything from mobility disabilities to whether or not that be financial or within the classroom, as mentioned by Isabella. I think one of the most important parts about the University Affairs portfolio is advocating to the administration and to upper faculties if something is wrong, then you need to have student support within that faculty to keep going and trying to change those things. One of the more important things I think is especially deregulation of tuition as well as mobility, especially with the construction on campus. Having asked a question to Senate, you can't always look out for everyone, but you need to make sure that your team of senators is out there doing a lot of the groundwork and bringing those ideas forward so that all of your team can act on it. Your University Affairs team can act on trying to remove these barriers that exist on campus.
Thank you. So one more question for both of you. I noticed you both mentioned mental health and student services in your platforms. Obviously, the VP Student Life is primarily responsible for working with McGill Student Services and the SMU mental health portfolio, but how do you feel that the VPUA can best advocate for improved student mental health and well-being at the university-wide level?
Would you like to?
Sure. I think there's a couple things. First and foremost is creating a discussion about how we study. A lot of students go through their studying habits and aren't very successful in that, and maybe working with the Library Improvement Fund to create some sort of awareness initiative for students that are sitting in libraries that don't leave them. I also think that we need to have a greater look at student services. As we all know, Robin Wiltshire came through recently. I think we need to let the dust settle and then start advocating for more student representation so they can listen to student feedback on student services. And that's going to be a huge thing moving forward for the University Affairs portfolio, because the student life, Vice President of Student Life, doesn't necessarily have that voice at Senate to do that. So you need to be working as a team in order to make sure that you're making sure the message is being relayed to the appropriate people.
Yeah. So for my response, I'd like to focus on two things. The first is that the mental health services and counseling services are severely heavily burdened. And this is an issue that I think the UA position can help address, just because there's the issue with wait lines, which is something we hear a lot from students, and this is created by the overburdening of counselors and mental health professionals that are currently employed, but also the fact that these professionals aren't being used to their full capacity or in the specialization that they usually work in. I think that if we have more accessible teaching practices, then there will be a lesser burden on mental health and counseling services, because the classrooms won't be stressing and putting these burdens on students to the point where they need to go access these services so heavily. On top of that, I think we don't have a good idea of what is actually going on when students go to these services. We don't know if this is an institutional problem or like a one bad egg kind of problem, and I think that if you read my platform, you'll see how I deal with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, that exhausts the incumbent questions. So now we have time for 2 audience or live stream questions. So if there's anyone in the audience who wishes to ask a question, please line up behind the microphone. If there's no one who wants to ask a question, we will move right on to the next part, but it seems there is, so that's great. And so just, if you're with a student publication, maybe just announce that. If not, just say your name.
No Student Press. My name is Dorothy, U3 Science. My question is, what do you see as the role of VP University Affairs in the ongoing implementation of the new policy against sexual violence?
So I guess I'll start. I think being a student and a student advocate, the greatest strength that this position has to bring to the sexual assault policy is a strong implementation. So having that connection with students so that you know how the policy is being implemented. Policy is one thing, but its implementation is way more important. I think that based on the fact that I've already been in the BSN, or the Black Students Network, and have been, although peripherally involved with the working group that had been created and brought this forward, I think that I have exposure to the kind of arguments and what people want to see out of this policy, to know if it really is accomplishing what students want from it.
Having a lot of experience dealing with the implementation of policies within the engineering society, I can say that the University Affairs has a critical role in making sure that student voices are heard. On the implementation committee, there will only be one student representative, and I think it's very crucial that that person is not only educated and aware of what this policy means, but how it will impact students. And moving forward from that, this needs to be a wide discussion across campus, because this isn't just one thing. As we've seen over the past month, this isn't a small issue, and I really think that communication with students on this issue will be key, because if they don't understand where to go or how that implementation process is going to be working, I don't think this policy will succeed, and we need it to succeed on campus, because people like myself who feel like they may not have necessarily been able to use it in the past, I want to make sure that students are able to use it in the future.
Thank you. We have time for one more audience question.
Hi, I'm Maeve, U1 Arts. I'm not part of the press. It's a question for Alex.
Yeah.
I saw that you mentioned equity in your portfolio, and I was just wondering how you plan to implement the equity mandate of the UA portfolio.
Pardon me, could you just repeat that a little bit louder?
Sure. I saw that you mentioned equity in your platform, and I was just wondering how you plan to implement that if you were elected.
Well, one of the things I said in the press debates, and I'll repeat that here, is that I've definitely not had the same level of training as Isabel, but one of the things I, as an elected representative, if I were to be elected, is to make myself available and accountable to the actions as an equity officer of the society, which is probably one of the most important things. The other thing is that having or hiring equity commissioners that are knowledgeable, understanding of the equity policy that we have here on campus is one of the only other things I can say that would really withhold how I could possibly do that. If you're not aware, the equity policy is expiring this 2018, and I would endeavor to work with them very closely to make sure that that is updated and renewed, because I think it's very important that we have it here on campus.
Thank you, and we'll allow Isabel to respond to that too.
Okay, so I think the equity portfolio is interesting because in the foreseeable future, there's going to be so much for it to cover, right? There's so many equity issues that the equity commissioners and the committee could cover in the future. I think my approach to it is that I want to focus on one thing and get a lot of traction going on a specific issue. The issue that I want to tackle is the idea of safety on campus. What are the components to safety on campus? What creates it? What sustains it? And what the organization, different institutions on campus have a role to play in it. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, now we will move to a 3-minute open debate format or open discussion. So you have 3 minutes between yourselves to talk about the issues and questions we've raised over the past few minutes. So whoever wants to start, if you have anything you want to say, and then we'll move on from there. It's totally up to you.
Yeah, I think I'll start with the issue of safety on campus. One of the things I would say is, having worked on the University Health and Safety Committee, you may have seen through Spotted McGill, which was made very public, reports of there being identified persons along Dr. Penfield and Peel intersections that were very scary for a lot of students. One of the things, as an engineering senator and sitting on University Health and Safety Committee, I personally asked security to increase security rounds there, especially during the evening hours between 4 and 6 when the sun was down, to make sure that, that was being addressed, as well as going through with Pierre, who's the head of security on UHSC, to make sure that proper lighting was available on campus. So I can say, from an institutional standpoint, we're working on that, and I see where you're going with it, but I think I'm not totally clear on how you plan to tackle that.
So the way I plan to tackle it is from an equity perspective, like through the equity commissioner portfolio and through the equity committee, just based on the fact that because it's a committee, it has the potential for research and to find out what best practices are and to see what, these are very tangible examples of issues of safety on campus, but I think based on recent events, for example, like tweets by Igor Sadikov and like the presence of our past VP external, I don't think those approaches necessarily account and have proper mechanisms to address with those specific issues. So that's where I'm coming from with the portfolio, is that our equity policy and the way we approach equity on campus has to be related to the McGill context, and what the McGill context has given us is something very particular and something that I don't think we should think we can just tackle as it comes. I think a lot of proactivity is necessary in this case.
You still have 45 seconds if you have anything you want to talk about, or if there's nothing else, we can move on to your closing statements. What do you guys think?
Is there anything you would like to ask me?
Not necessarily. No,
Okay.
It's all good.
Cool. Okay, so we'll move on to closing statements, starting with Alex, and you each have 1 minute for your closing statement. Again, I'll tap when you have 10 seconds left.
Yeah, so one of the main things, again, to reiterate from my opening statement, I'm running to put students first. Through my experience in engineering, I've looked at a lot of budgets, I've done a lot of logistics coordination, and now at the university level, I've done a lot of administrative work. I have a very good rapport with the administrative personnel, and I've been able to work with them successfully on a number of things outside of UHSC, and one of them would be APC as well as UTLWG. But I'd like to stress that I think at the end of the day, there's a lot of trust that needs to be rebuilt between students, and that's not going to happen overnight. And you need a candidate who's going to understand the internal workings of SMU, cement our policies in place, and move forward with them.
Perfect. Yeah, I'd like to use my closing statement to talk about accountability. As someone who has previously been in a position where they had to work with their aggressor, it was so frustrating to know about the rumors about our past VP external and still not feel like I had anything that I could do about it. I think that accountability is more than just policy, more than just this voice, or not this voice, but these rules telling you what you can and cannot do. I think that the key to accountability also has a lot to do with the culture that is fostered in a specific workplace. You need to come to the workplace confident in your own skills, but also continuously learning and taking concrete steps, such as speaking with people who do similar jobs as you, taking workshops. Continuous learning is humbling and allows you to be accountable to the people that you are representing. So I hope that you look through the rest of my campaign, spent a lot of time and effort on it, so I'm pretty proud of it. And I hope you all have a nice night. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, guys. So we will now move on to the candidate for VP Internal, Maya. This position is uncontested, so it's more or less taking the format of a press conference, but I'm sure we'll have fun regardless. So the way it'll work again is Maya will give an opening statement that's 1.5 minutes long, then we'll have 2 incumbent questions and 3 questions from the audience, and then she'll give a 1-minute closing statement. Yeah, Alex and I will be reading the incumbent questions because they are not here to join us. So Maya, whenever you're ready.
Sure. So hello, everyone. My name is Maya Parker. I am a third-year international development and political science student. I am the current internal logistics coordinator for the SSMU, and I'm running to be your next VP internal. Ideally, I would want, if elected, to address issues such as bringing cohesion back to the internal portfolio within the rest of the SSMU, as well as other departmental organizations. I would also want to diversify the events portfolio, looking at smaller, more inclusive events. And the third leg of my platform would be first-year engagement.
Thank you. All right, we'll move straight into, into the incumbent questions. So the first incumbent question is, given the current political climate on campus and engagement being one of the key aspects of your portfolio, Sorry, one second. Let me restart that. So given the current political climate on campus and engagement being one of the key aspects of your portfolio, how do you plan to mend the relationship between the SSMU and its members?
Sure. So I think that there's a couple different ways that can be addressed through the internal portfolio. And the internal portfolio is really great because it creates a direct channel between the SSMU and a lot of students who don't otherwise associate with SSMU in political processes, for example, through things like events and communication. So those are some of the ways that you'd start doing that. So one of the ways that I would want to create more affinity and engagement in that sense would be making the listserv more relatable, continuing a trend that Daniel Laurie has started this year, maybe even adding some more relatable content. As well, in terms of events planning, I'd want to create engagement in terms of diversifying the events portfolio, like I said earlier. I've learned throughout my 2 years as a member of SPIN, the events planning network on campus, that events don't necessarily have to be large to engage large portions of the student body. They can be small, meaningful things like giving free food during exams. Those are just some small ideas, but I think that they can collectively engage campus away from a politically divided one.
Great. So the second question is, how will you promote an inclusive environment in both the non-faculty and faculty context for this year's orientation week?
Sure. So the role of SSMU has shrunk considerably in Frosh over the years. And as VP Internal, I would act as a mediator for all Froshes to sort of come to the table. And I'd want to be able to facilitate a process where smaller faculties as well as non-faculty Froshes have their voices heard, because these are important for a lot of first-year students, and that's another leg of my platform, which is first-year engagement. They all provide meaningful experiences to first-year students in their own ways, and so I'd really want to work with a lot of the inclusivity and equity coordinators, especially on the big 3 Froshes, to see how we can sort of move events around and try to create some collaboration between larger faculties as well as smaller faculties and non-faculty Froshes. But I really think the key is to try and find a balance between the way we're using our resources through big and small Froshes, while at the same time engaging all students who choose to participate in these events.
Thank you. Okay, we will now move to our audience and live stream questions. You guys can just line up if you have a question, and then we'll just take them as they come.
Hi, my name is Tafumi, not part of the press, and my question is, so this year as a departmental president, I found a major issue with the SSMU listserv and not including departmental associations, which offer like a pretty great outreach to students that we can't reach, because obviously, you know, for me, who's a departmental of political science, my events the events that are run by our executive don't only apply to students in poli-sci, they can apply to students in other departments and interested in politics. So how are you gonna fix that? Because when I did try and talk to Mr. Laurie, it was not, you know, it ended up just being a non-solution because there are apparently a bunch of barriers that don't seem to be like worked on, and so I don't know. How are you gonna plan on fixing that for future years?
Right. Okay. So I guess a lot of the standardized process in terms of submitting content for the listserv is pretty set in stone right now. But that being said, I would look forward to working with departmental organizations in the sense that I think that there can be a lot of cross collaboration between the SMU and our events and what we're trying to promote, as well as with yours. So there's a lot of things that you can offer to students that we can effectively promote. And I really think that cross collaboration in a sense of like working with events and what different events can offer individuals is a good way to start. So for example, promoting students going to your event would give them an incentive to come to a SMU event like Line Skip, for example, or like things like that, or you could do the same for us. But I really do want to work with departmental associations to try and find ways to better engage them with SMU events as well as communicating those as well.
Thank you. Any other audience questions? Okay, and there appears to be none on the live stream. Any other audience questions? Going once, going twice. Oh, okay, awesome.
Hello again. Question about Frosh, going back to Frosh. What are your thoughts on how to incorporate more programming to improve students' health and well-being into orientation events and Frosh events? Because that's when we catch a lot of the new students. That's when they're interacting with McGill, with SMU for the first time. What are some ways we could promote health and well-being through Frosh?
Cool. So I definitely think that that's something that I would really want to speak to all of the departmental internals on, ways to kind of create cohesive programming in order to do so. And these can be big things and little things like creating better guidelines for students in terms of how to frosh, small things like, making sure you're taking naps, getting enough rest, staying out of the sun, drinking water, having food options more accessible and water options more accessible besides alcohol, non-alcoholic beverages and things like that are just some of the small ways that I think you can promote health and wellness. It could also be tied into different events. Like for example, maybe if a frosh wanted to organize some sort of like morning Zumba or like yoga or something like that, I think that's something that could definitely be looked into as well.
Great, thank you. We have time for one more audience question. Okay, seeing none. Maya, you have 1 minute for your closing statement.
Sure. So like I said, I've been working within this portfolio in SMU for the past 2 years. And the reason for this is because I have a lot of passion for what this portfolio is able to provide students. I think that it provides students a really great connection to SMU, and it's able to sort of humanize SMU and take away from a lot of the sort of like more bureaucratic elements of it. And I think that's something that a lot of people find value in. A lot of people see the role of VP Internal as just being a party planner, but I think it has a lot more to offer students than that. And that's something that I really want to do going forward. I think that building from the ground up with first year engagement and engagement across all spans of student life is something that we can use to create a more unified SMU and student body in the year forward. And that's something that I'm really excited to hopefully be able to do if I am elected.
Great, thank you. Okay, next up we have our 3 candidates for president. So we'll let them get up here. That's Helen, Muna, and Lucas. So the way this section will work is each candidate will give a 1.5 minute opening statement. After that, there are 2 incumbent questions that Alex and I will read. Each candidate will get 1 minute to respond to those. Then we'll have 3 to 4 audience questions, which each candidate will get a minute to respond to. And then we will have 6 to 7 minutes of open debate between the 3 candidates. And as always, remember, when I tap the gavel once, that means you have 10 seconds left. So we'll start off with our opening statements. We'll go Helen, Muna, and then Lucas. So Helen, when you're ready, you have a 1.5 minutes.
Great, thank you. Can you hear me? Okay. Hi, everyone. So my name is Helen. I'm a U3 student in arts, and I am running for the position of SMU president. So my campaign slogan is lean back. And essentially what that means to me is I want the students of SMU, I want our membership to feel safe and comfortable and supported, leaning back and relying on the SMU executive to address their needs and in order to rebuild trust between us and the membership. So what this looks like so I'm going to pursue this by following my 3 campaign cornerstones. of efficiency and collaboration, accountability, and student advocacy. So through efficiency and collaboration, I want to create paid positions that will increase participation within SMU and reduce the amount of work hours that SMU executives work, which is currently within 60 to 80 hours per week. With accountability, I want to propose a SMU executive code of conduct that will that will pursue a SMU standard for executives to work within. And with student advocacy, I want to create somewhat of a racialized counseling program to address the needs of racialized students on campus. And that's my platform right now, and then we'll hear more about it as the debate goes on.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. We next have Muna for a minute and a half.
Hi everyone, my name is Muna. I'm a fourth year student in political science and sociology, originally from Uzbekistan. For the past 4 years, I have been the Chief Justice of the Judicial Board, which gives me an innate understanding of the inner workers of SMU. Last year, I was also the president of UN Women McGill, as well as the Sociology Student Association. The 4 cornerstones of my platform is the increase of mental health services at McGill, the creation of a sexual violence policy, the increase of accountability, and as well as the promotion of Frankophone interest on campus. J'aimerais favoriser l'intégration de la langue française ainsi que l'intégration des étudiants francophones en installant une semaine juste dédiée aux intérêts francophones, ainsi que en travaillant avec les commissionnaires francophones des différentes facultés pour pouvoir faire en sorte que les étudiants francophones se sentent inclus sur le campus. Also, following the recent events on campus, I'm really excited to work with all of you to restore trust in SMU and also to restore SMU's reputation. So if you would like to learn how I would like to implement all of my ideas and learn more about my experiences as well as my concrete plan, visit smuna.ca. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, we have Lucas for a minute and a half.
Hi, my name is Lucas. I'm a U2 biology and computer science student, and I'm running to be your SMU president. So the number one thing that I'd like to put out to people is that McGill has about 30,000 undergrads, and about 10% of those undergrads vote. So at the time of year when it is most important to be involved with the student government, 1 out of every 10 even makes the effort. And I don't think that that's the student's fault. I think that SMU has had a very, very, very bad record of engaging students and truly representing them. Now, it's no secret that I'm an outsider to SMU. I've never held an official SMU position before. But I felt that when I ran this presidency, that my position as a candidate would be to represent the average student, to make their voices heard, and to increase student presence in SMU. The platform is composed of an open door policy. I certainly think that more can be done to do things that represent what most students want rather than what the couple of people who regularly interact with SMU want. It's true. And yeah, I think I'd rather just get to the debate rather than talk.
Okay, very well. So moving on, we have our 2 incumbent questions. So the first incumbent question, and then each candidate will have a minute to respond. First question is, as SMU president, you are expected to act as a resource to the other executives to ensure that they are effectively supported in fulfilling their roles. How do you balance support and accountability in leading a team? And so we'll start with Helen for the 1-minute response.
Can I have a second to think
Of
about it
course.
for a second? Okay. Support and accountability. So personally, I think as an exec, as a president, I need to outline I need to ask what support looks like for my executive team members. So I think it's important to have a standard going into the role and have an idea of what their needs are before you delve into things and sort of just end up assuming what you think works best based on how you operate. I think in terms of holding myself accountable. Is that when you say accountability?
Yeah, it's balancing support accountability in leading a team.
Okay, so I think it's important to recognize that as an exec or as a president, I will be there for my execs to depend on, and I will be there to support them, but I also have expectations from them in which I will outline in my code of conduct, and through the code of conduct, I expect them to be able to be held to that standard and to follow through.
Cool. Thank you. Next up, Muna.
Would you mind just repeating the question real quick?
Yeah, of course. So, as SMU president, you are expected to act as a resource to the other executives to ensure that they are effectively supported in fulfilling their roles. How do you balance support and accountability in leading a team?
So, I guess the number one thing is, by accountability, I would like to right away start with regular minutes posting as well as summaries posted on the website. Because if you look at the website right now, there are no minutes of the board of directors, for example, for the past 2 years. And in regards to supporting your team and leading your team, I would agree with Helen. I think it's important to remember that everyone is different and everyone has their own needs and how they operate. And I think as president, it's your job to be aware of those needs and also like compensate where you see like the other executives are having some troubles with. So I guess the two main points would be to collaborate and to remember that you are a team, and to make sure that the information is available on SMU's website as well as through the Listserve, for example. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Lucas.
I see no need for there to be a conflict between those two ideas, between support and accountability. If you think of an archetypal leader, I would think of, say, a parent. A parent has no problem putting their child on timeout if something has been done that the child needs to be corrected for. But at no point during that timeout does the child worry that the parent doesn't love them anymore. I might be saying that because my dad is in the audience. So I think the important thing is just when there is accountability, and I think specifically the question is how do you correct somebody who's made a mistake. I don't think there needs to be any confrontation behind it. I think if there are clear rules of, hey, if you do this, this will happen, and then the president follows through on those things, I don't think there ever needs to be any animosity between members on the team. There are clear expectations, there are clear outcomes. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, the second question is as follows. The president also sits on the McGill University Board of Governors and Senate. Last term, SMU released a research report regarding issues with the Board of Governors and recommendations to improve the diversity, representation, and accountability of this body. What do you see as advocacy priorities for SMU in terms of improving McGill's governance, and how will you pursue those as president?
We'll start again with Helen.
Can you repeat the last half of that sentence again?
Yep. So let me just repeat the last sentence. What do you see as advocacy priorities for SMU in terms of improving McGill's governance, and how will you pursue those as president?
As advocacy priorities, I think there needs to be more representation on the Board of Governors, essentially, for students who at the undergraduate level. I think it's kind of disproportionate looking at the amount, or looking at the number of undergraduate students versus that of admin and academic staff. I think it's another reason why it's so easy to sort of set aside the student opinion because we lack numbers. And I think if we're able to have more people speaking on behalf of our issues, then we'll be able to see greater change. Thank you.
So the situation right now as it stands is that the president is the only undergraduate that sits on the Board of Governors of McGill. So I think it's even more crucial for the president to be able to be firm in the advocacy of policies that are important to students, but also to foster an environment that shows that you can collaborate with the administration and that you are open to negotiation. So I would say that the main issue that I will be advocating for if elected president is mental health and the increase of mental health services on campus. And the other issues, I think it's for the undergraduates to decide, because as presidents, I am the only one who would be representing their voices, so I think it's even more important to actually get feedback and represent the voices of the students.
So I agree with Helen. I think numbers is certainly one way that we could increase that, just pushing to increase the student presence on those councils. But more so, one of the biggest issues with dealing with the Board of Governors or dealing with the Senate is teachers form alliances. And not teachers, obviously there's administration, but let's say teachers, simple language. They form alliances, and it's really hard as a member of SSMU to break into those. So I think more time needs to be spent on strengthening alliances with those other groups within McGill, with those units, so that we can be more effective as a student association when we are pushing for what we want. We're not doing that alone anymore. We can push the students' interests with the rest of McGill behind us. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, we will now turn to our audience and live stream questions. First off, we have a live stream question for the first time, which is very exciting. So this question comes from John Dacker. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. What representation can you offer to French, Québécois, and other Francophone students on campus that the other candidates for president of SSMU cannot? So each candidate has a minute to answer for that.
I begin?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. I think the Francophone Affairs Committee could definitely use some revitalization. I think primarily I'm exploring the ideas of essentially Francophone students, those coming from Quebec are more familiar with the area, are more familiar with the culture and the environment than students who are from other parts of Canada or the world. So I think it would be really interesting to explore somewhat of a project where Francophone Montrealers, or really just Montrealers, essentially have like a buddy system or a network where they explore the city, explore the area together. This could even work with McGill residences, in which students come into the environment and want to learn more about where they're going to be spending the next 4 years. So I think this could be more of a collaborative effort.
Thank you. Muna?
Would you mind reading the question again?
Yeah, of course. So what representation can you offer to French, Québécois, and other Francophone students on campus that the other candidates for president of SSMU cannot?
Donc, je pense que je vais répondre à cette question en français. Premièrement, je suis allée en cégep français quand j'étais au cégep. Je suis aussi comme un produit du système français quand j'ai eu mon bac en L. Ce que j'aimerais faire pour promouvoir les intérêts des étudiants francophones sur le campus, c'est de promouvoir une semaine ou deux juste dédiée aux événements francophones et à leur intérêt. Deuxièmement, créer un système de mentorat pour les étudiants qui viennent des systèmes français et qui transitionnent du système français au système anglais. Moi, personnellement, j'ai eu beaucoup de difficultés à faire cette transition et j'aimerais aider aux étudiants d'avoir des mentors et une transition plus facile. Et troisièmement, j'aimerais travailler avec les French Commissioners pour pouvoir organiser des événements qui répondent, j'imagine, aux besoins des étudiants francophones sur le campus. OK, merci.
Just a reminder, the tap just means you have 10 seconds left. Okay. Go ahead, Luke.
Premièrement, je parle français comme Mouna, alors c'est plus facile d'engager avec les étudiants directement. Pour moi, je trouve que le problème, c'est qu'il y a comme une mur entre les anglophones et les francophones à McGill, où il y a une culture si beau à Montréal avec les Français et les Québécois et d'autres parts du monde, qui ne peut pas être partagé effectivement avec les Anglais ou les anglophones à McGill. Et c'est bizarre, parce que si tu demandes la plupart du monde anglophone à McGill, ils veulent apprendre le français. Alors je pense pour moi, c'est un processus de promouvoir, apprendre le français pour les anglophones, parce qu'ils veulent ce service. Et comme ça, la culture va être plus puissante et on va aller faire plus ensemble.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll have a question from the audience. Go ahead.
Hi, I thought that last question was really relevant, so I wanted to maybe extend the conversation and ask the candidates how they plan to increase representation and advocacy for racialized students and students of color and students who belong to ethnic minorities. And also how, like, what makes you qualified to do that? What's your experience in such areas, etc.?
Okay, we'll start with Helen again.
Okay, so part of my platform under student advocacy is to create a program under the counseling program, or to help create a program with the VP Student Life and the committee, or the Mental Health Committee's subcommittee on advocacy to, again, create a program for racialized students and counseling. So it would mirror the currently existing Pride program that exists for LGBTQIA and queer identifying and trans identifying students. And essentially, this program would be used to address the needs that are unique to racialized students on campus. And I have experience currently working on the Equitable Governance Reform Committee, in which I am working with other committee members to create equity seats on legislative council. I especially was pushing for the creation of a racialized students and separate Black student seat, given the colonial and slave-owning history of the founder of McGill University. So I think that is very important. It's something I want to continue to pursue in the future and feel like McGill could do a better job of. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up, Muna.
Well, two things, I guess. First, I would like to work with the SMU Equity Commission to consult the students in question to make sure that their interests are represented, because I think consultation is key in order to represent policies that are comprehensive and actually respond to the needs of students. Two, I would reform the J-board system, because I think the judicial board on McGill is quite important in making sure that marginalized students and their interests can go through channels and such as the judicial board and file complaints within SMU. Right now, it's quite problematic to file such complaints because the judicial board basically is ineffective because of the dynamic between SMU executives and the board of directors of SMU. So two things, I would collaborate with SMU Equity in order to write a comprehensive policy representing all student interests, and two, I would reform the judicial board to better represent the interests as well as the needs of marginalized students.
Thank you.
So I think my number one priority here would be to give those students voices for themselves. So any way that SMU can increase and expand the platforms that those marginalized students can speak from is something that we should pursue. I think that there's a lot to be said for letting people speak for themselves and represent their own experiences and their own ideas. And I think anytime SMU is going to take an official stance on something, it can't be without letting those people share their experiences directly. So within SMU's governments, more representation in things like the Legislative Council, having seats that are protecting these kinds of things would be obviously one obvious step. And otherwise, I think just keeping the discussion going and keeping an open ear.
Thank you. Okay, we're now going to go to a live stream question. So this question comes from Chris Mills. What do you plan to do to support clubs better? Under the current exec, applications for new clubs have been frozen, while offices for clubs and other support services have been removed. So we'll start again with Helen.
Okay. So in terms of supporting clubs, the moratorium on clubs stems from the lack of funding right now that SMU is receiving. I think so. Services have been cut, staff hours have been cut, facility hours have been cut. I think what needs to come from this, or what can best alleviate this, is working on brainstorming funding funding prospects that will allow us to be able to prioritize students and their abilities to create projects and clubs for themselves. I completely understand with funding frustration as someone who is currently president of the SSA. I feel like funding could be better compared to other departments, but I think it's something that I am well versed in and I empathize with, and I will work with VP operations as well as student life and I guess finance as well to brainstorm options that we can use to get things going again. Thank you for the question.
Okay, next up, Muna.
I think it's important to work with the VP Finance in order to restructure the budget a little bit, just because a lot of students don't know this, but SMU's budget is $7.6 million, which is quite a large sum to be put into student services. And I think right now $1.2 million goes into just administrative fees, which is pretty high. I think that restructuring the SMU budget along with the VP Finance as well operations is quite important in order to ensure that we are actually an effective student body that fulfills SMU's mandate of providing services to students, because we are a student society that is supposed to do that. And so yeah, I would just try to make sure that our funds are better utilized, and $10,000, for example, don't go into the researcher of a defense, for example, of PR stuff.
Thank you. Moving on to Lucas.
So, wow, louder. So I think the number one problem is, like Muna said, we have a lot of money. We're just not spending it very well. And the club freezing has actually affected me. I'm the president of a Students Association at McGill. Independent, though. And we were affected by this. Now, I think one thing that you can do is still give students a clear plan of what to follow in order to make sure that their club can be successful without SMU funding. But within SMU funding, I don't believe necessarily in cutting staff. I do believe in making them more effective, hiring the right staff. It's tough. Money is tough. Actually, I won't leave it on money is tough. What a terrible ending. I will say the number one thing is redistribute.
Okay, thank you. Do we have an audience question here? Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Hi, my name is Claire. My question is super simple, and it leads off the last question. As president, how would you affect SMU student fees? Thank you.
Okay, we'll start with Helen again.
How would I affect SMU student fees? Personally, I think similarly to what we've discussed is we need to look at how the money is being allocated and to figure out sort of what is necessary or not necessary, but I guess sort of figure out what our priorities are for the year. I think priorities change, they shift, and I think being able to find funds in other areas. So I was brainstorming what it could look like to find or to get more, I guess, sponsors. Like we recently passed the menstrual hygiene policy, and I think so maybe teaming up with groups or companies like Kotex in order to help further this endeavor would be very interesting and something that we can explore. So just getting the right kinds of sponsorships and funding.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to Muna.
I guess I would like to start off by saying that I will not increase student fees or push for the increase of student fees. I think SMU has a lot of money that could be reallocated and just the use could be rethought. An example would be that legal fees. I think, for example, in the recent controversy that arose on campus, a lot of legal fees have been spent, tens of thousands of dollars, on just the brainstorms of what the solutions could be. And at the end of the day, which I think is just a terrible waste of student money, those tens of thousands of dollars just went to waste because the lawyer's advice was not followed in both of those cases. So I would just avoid simple waste like that because those are your fees, and I think those should go to the provision of services that people could benefit from and not just go into thin air. Thank you.
Thank you. And finishing off with Lucas.
So as far as student fees go, I'm actually pro opt-outable student fees. I think there are a lot of students who wouldn't mind paying another $2, $3 for the services on campus. And for any students that aren't okay with it or don't feel like it, they can just opt out. So I'm pro that. It seems like no downsides. I'm very anti-advertisement. I really don't want our campus, our place of learning, to be a place where companies are putting up advertisements everywhere and we become a very commercial campus. As far as waste goes, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Unfortunately, we don't have any more time for questions. I'm sorry, but we're now moving on to the open debate portion. So this is 6 minutes maximum. Debate between the three candidates, discussion between the three candidates based on any topic raised over the previous set of questions. So anyone who would like to start can start and raise an issue. In order to make sure that everyone has a chance to speak, I'm going to tap the gavel every 30 seconds to give you an idea to kind of keep your statements short so that everyone gets a chance to speak. So we'll start right now. Anyone who wants to start can go.
I guess just in terms of redistribution of financial resources, I think we should just be starting by redistribution of mental health resources, because right now in the 2016-2017 SMU budget, $0 have been allocated to mental health services. I think that's obviously problematic when it's quite an important issue on campus, and if we look at the statistics over the past 5 years, there has been a rise in demand by 35%. So I think mental health services should get more funding. Thank you.
Can I respond to that a little bit? I was, I guess, just reading through the platform that you posted, Muna, and it looked like you wanted to use the surplus from this year, I believe, the $100,000 surplus, to fund a new mental health endeavor. Personally, I just took issue with that because I see that there are quite a few endeavors that are McGill administrated and student-led that are currently, like, they exist and they're doing fairly well in their own right.
You're not cut off. I'm just.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. And I just the $100,000 surplus, from what I read in the financial report, was supposed to go into the SURF fund. And after the recent years of SMU running a deficit, the SURF fund needs to be replenished. I think it's problematic to use the surplus for another mental health endeavor when instead we could work on consolidating the mental health programs that currently exist. And so what I propose is potentially creating a network of programs. So instead, like you mentioned, students wait 3 weeks to get an appointment with counseling. So then potentially instead there could be a referral to the peer support network in the meantime, and then potentially from the peer support network, if there are any issues there, then being referred to Nightline. So I think there are options that don't necessarily include taking from the SURF fund, which is meant to replenish the facility.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just to respond to that, one correction, it's $200,000 in surplus. Two, I don't mean to say that I want to create a new mental health service. What I mean to say is I would like to put those funds in order to streamline the existing system of collaboration between mental health services, counseling, as well the peer support center. So what I want to do right now, I think it's problematic. A lot of the people who come into mental health services, they don't get an appointment, and they also don't hear about the peer support center, which exists in order to get the surplus from, not the surplus, to get all the people who could not be accommodated, for example, by mental health services. So what I wanted to do is use that money in order to research best practices and just to make sure that our system that already exists becomes more effective. I don't want to put those funds into the creation of new things because I think it will take more money than that to create a properly functioning and proper system of mental health.
Just briefly pause. So when I tap my gavel, it's been 30 seconds. So the idea behind that is so you can self-regulate, so everyone gets to talk like more often. I'm gonna let Lucas jump in there.
So my instinct is just to say, let's fund mental health. And I do agree that some of the funding should go to it. Now, I just worry about saying, let's put money at this thing and hope that that fixes it. There are really obvious, challenges that we face with mental health on campus right now. There's an overburdening of the systems that are in place, and there's a stigmatization behind it that groups on campus are doing wonderful work with making improvements on. So I think our position in SMU is what is the best way to help these services. You can throw money at a problem, and there is money to throw. This is a good thing to put money into. But I think just saying I'm going to fund this thing with this much money is kind of useless without a plan.
Yeah, go ahead.
Obviously, in 30 seconds, I'm not gonna explain a concrete plan right now, but what I'm saying is student fees are not going into the provision of services that students need, and I think mental health is a priority on campus. I'm not saying we're just gonna throw money blindly at mental health services and hope that it works out for the best. What I'm trying to say is more attention should be paid to this, because right now in SMU's budget, it's $0. So $0, and I repeat, it goes into mental health. If that's not problematic, I don't know what is.
I'm gonna let Helen go.
Okay, I think this is a great topic, and I also think we should probably take some time to address factors that lead to deteriorating mental health issues. I think as an institution, McGill or SMU as well as an organization could really step up the game in terms of encouraging students to participate in the organization, in terms of supporting students, and in terms of remaining accountable. I think people don't want to engage with SMU. I think that's pretty sad, because this is an incredible community, and I think it has been, and it can continue to be an incredible community, and I think it can be a place for students to be able to come together in their own different pockets and to support the endeavors that they create, that they support. And I think maybe funding mental health initiatives wouldn't be as much of an issue if we could also create a better SMU community that will sort of offset and prevent these problems that are coming up.
Okay, we have 1 minute left in the discussion.
Yeah. Very true. Thank you, Helen. So one example of a SMU funding mental health would be Nightline. So it's not zero. That's not necessarily put under the title mental health in the budget, and that's kind of what I was speaking to, is you don't just put money towards an idea, you put money towards a plan and towards a thing. And I totally respect that you don't have time to elaborate on that in 30 seconds. But I think if I were doing the same thing, if I were going to make the same statement, I would say this is specifically the group that I want to give money to, and this is specifically what they intend to use it for.
Okay, there are 10 seconds left. Muna, you get the last word. In 10 seconds.
I guess if I were to restructure the mental health budget under SMU, I would obviously put more money into the peer support network, because I think it's going to benefit a lot. I would also put more money into just the infrastructure, because right now the liaison between mental health and the peer support center, it's just new, so I would just publicize the service more. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we will now move to our closing statement. So each candidate has 1 minute. We'll start again with Helen.
Hello. So again, as you've heard over the course of this debate, my platform points include increasing efficiency and collaboration, holding SMU executives accountable through a code of conduct, and increasing student advocacy, working on improving student advocacy by the implementation of a racialized students counseling group. So I think students here at SMU are disengaged, students here are bitter, and students here feel unrepresented. So, and this is all by SMU, not just bitter in general. So as president, I will strive towards building a relationship and a new SMU that will allow students to trust the institution again. I had an interview with the Tribune earlier today, and they asked me where I saw SMU in 5 years, and my answer to that, like I said, and I will say here, is I see SMU that is a SMU that is like untouched by everything that has gone on over the past few years, and will be able to increase or to trust their administration again. And I want to be the president that will facilitate that and begin this process. Thank you.
Thank you. Muna.
I guess following the recent events on campus, it's more than ever important to restore trust in SMU, because right now it's at all-time low. I would like to work with students in order to rebuild SMU's reputation, as well as image, because I think right now it's also at its all-time low. I think I'm a competent candidate because I've been working for SMU for the past 4 years as the inter-campus outreach coordinator of the Environment Committee, as well as the Chief Justice for the past 3 years. I also think I have concrete ideas that could benefit SMU. If you'd like to learn more about those ideas, please visit my website, which is smuna.ca. And if you would like to join this movement, please visit my Facebook website, because all of my platforms and ideas and experience are all there. Thank you. Let's build trust in SMU together.
Thank you. And finally, Lucas.
Shoot, brain fart.
Pardon me?
Just brain fart.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. Go ahead. Let me know when you're ready.
Sure. I'm thinking about it.
Just a reminder, audience, while we're taking this brief break, at 7 o'clock there will be pizza, so stick around for that. Yeah. Okay. Are you ready to go? Yeah? Okay, go ahead.
Briefly, the people that are in this room and the people that are watching the live stream right now at home, we are the people who are engaged with SMU. We're the people who listen. We have great ideas. We have a lot of ambition. We have a lot of talents. And we have a lot of passion. And the people in the wider McGill community have that too. And I think we need to build our family as big as we can so that all of those ideas and all those voices can be heard by the student body that's supposed to represent everybody. So that's my focus. Another thing I think is very important is accountability. So as much as I'd like to say, if I'm president of SMU, SMU won't make any mistakes, that's just not true. There's always something going on. So it will be to increase accountability so that students can hold us accountable and to make better efforts to relate and be positive with students.
Thank you. Let's give a round of applause for all of our candidates. Thank you very much, guys. Next up, we have the candidates for VP External, Noah Century and Connor Spencer.
All right, candidates, thank you for coming. So, let me just pull up the questions. All right. So, first of all, we're going to have a 1 minute opening speech for each of you. So whenever you want to start, you can go right ahead.
Yeah, all right. All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Noah Century. I'm currently finishing my bachelor in music performance, and I'm running for VP External. Well, mainly I'm getting involved in SMU because I want to help. I want to do good, and I want that good to affect the most people. My platform to be able to do that involves, first of all, joining AVEC. I feel it's important that we join with a federation of other universities so that we can lobby and fight for the interests of students across the province to the provincial government. I also want to improve interfaculty communication and relations. I feel like too many students miss out on what life at McGill is like, on their idea of the McGill life, and they're limited by the faculty they've joined. And I think that's because not enough of them are aware of the sheer variety of possibilities available to them at McGill. I also plan to fight for the increase of the minimum wage to $15 an hour, and to fight for paid internships and for floor fellows to get paid. I think I'm going to stop there.
All right, thank you. It's actually 1 minute and a half. Sorry about that. I gave you the right time, but go ahead.
Hi, I'm Connor. I'm a fourth year German language and literature, WIMIS and art history student. And basically for the last 4 years of my 4 years in Montreal, I've been a social and environmental activist in the Montreal community, and for the last 2 years have worked pretty closely with the VP External in my involvement in different campaigns on campus, specifically, most directly, McGill Against Austerity. And so because of that, have been able to watch the last 2 VP Externals do their job and have opinions on how it's done well. And so basically, very briefly, the 4 points for my platform, first of all, is an integration into the larger Montreal community, so using my contacts with the other groups that I work with on lots of different campuses to make sure that we have a say and a part of the larger student movement in Montreal. Secondly, increase accessibility, which means a lot of different things, but applies to most of the mandate of the VP External, who works directly with a lot of marginalized groups on campus, as well as making sure that the information from the VP External office actually gets to everyone. Thirdly, the implementation of a gender and sexualized violence policy, and fourthly, the sustainability of all of these things.
Thank you. So now we'll be moving to the questions for the candidates. So from the candidates, candidate questions are, so as follows. What do you see as the role of the SSMU in the Montreal community and in the Quebec student movement? So.
Okay, so it's one that SMU hasn't incorporated itself in a long time, and that's something that hopefully we can rectify in the coming year. There's lots of work being done right now, especially against the precarity of students, and that's something that MUSE is fighting for on our campus right now as well. And so a collaboration between, that was the tagline for essay this year. So a collaboration between different groups working on the same thing would be lovely. Same thing with why it's so important to join AVEC and make sure that we're involved in a larger dialogue that is happening and constantly is happening within the Montreal community around how to properly protect student rights. And yeah, SMU has a very important role in that, and it's through the VP External Office that we need to make sure that this actually happens.
All right, thank you. Noah?
Yep. I believe that the role of SMU should be that of a representative of the McGill student body, and in this case specifically the VP External to serve as a representative for the McGill student body to the Montreal community. And that should be a much more involved responsibility than it has been these past few years. SMU should be participating more in developing any project that could help improve the life of students, not just here at McGill, but across the city, and as I mentioned earlier with AVEC, across the province.
Excellent, thank you. So now I'll take a question from the audience, if there are any. Yep. Yes, please.
I guess my question is, what experience do you both have that makes you able to complete what you're saying your platform is going to be?
So for the past year, and still now, I've been working as the VP External for the Music Undergraduate Student Association. So I do have experience working as a VP External, and in this case, what that meant was working with other executives and working and dealing with members of the school's administration. Part of that responsibility was also serving as is also serving as the music faculty representative at the SSMU Legislative Council. So I have experience in working with the Legislative Council. As part of being a counselor, I also got to sit on the ad hoc committee for provincial representation, where I got to discuss and work on how SSMU could go about joining FEC next year with the former VP External.
Thank you. Would you like to respond, Connor?
So as I mentioned before, I've kind of shadowed the VP External position just because of the work that I was already doing on campus for the last 2 years, and so always had a stake in what the VP External office does, and therefore have been able to form my own opinions and just watching how they do their work. As well, I'm involved in groups off campus, such as À la Rue Montréal, which works towards free education, and involving in a national platform towards free education and against the deregulation of tuition. I organize lots of demos both on campus and off, both in French and English, and I'm very used to working as a spokesperson and lobbying the provincial government, specifically through my work in McGill Against Austerity as well. Ultimately, what's under the portfolio is something that I'm really, really passionate about, and I'm just excited to do the work.
Thank you. Just as a reminder, when I tap, it's 10 seconds left.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions from the audience or from the media? All right. Thank you.
My question is, what are your plans for the Indigenous Affairs part of the portfolio VP External?
Okay, so this is something, that part of the portfolio and Les Affaires Francophones, I think has, for the last couple of years, been kind of put on the back burner by the former VP Externals. And it's something that's I hope to really, really work towards including. As well as at the same time recognize I don't come from those communities, and it's important that I don't have a stance on what that should be. It's about opening a dialogue with those communities of what they want to see and how we can make that happen.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Indigenous affairs and Francophone affairs have not been, don't seem to have been a very big part of the VP External's job lately, and I dearly wish to correct that. I wish our question was about Francophone affairs, but as far as Indigenous affairs go, I am sympathetic to the issues. I don't come from that background, so I cannot fully personally understand what it means for them, but I do intend to explore as many options as possible to try and improve their life here.
Thank you. So with that, the questions are concluded. We will now move into... Sorry?
Are the questions concluded? Or?
Oh yeah, they're concluded, unfortunately. We only had time for 3 questions. With that, we'll be moving into your 1-minute closing statements. So whoever would like to start, just go right ahead.
Sure, yeah. Moral of the story, I'm running for this position because it's work that I already do, and I would love to be able to have the platform of the VP External Office to be able to affect more change and continue doing the work that I already do on campus, and I am looking forward to it.
All right. Thank you.
I'd just like to add to what I didn't get to say during my opening statement that I also plan to work on improving accountability and improving the trust that students have for SSMU. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'm running because I want to do good. I want to help people. I want to do the most good for the most people. And I feel that the position of VP External Affairs is where my particular skills and talents can shine the most. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, guys. All right. So with that, we'll be inviting up the VP Finance, Arisha Khan. Is she not? Oh, there. Great. So without further ado, you will have 1.5 minutes for an opening statement. Whenever you're ready.
Cool. Hi everyone, my name is Risha and I'm hoping you'll elect me to be your VP Finance. I've worked in the SMU Finance portfolio for 2 years now. Last year I was a Finance and Operations Assistant, and this year where I got a taste of both the Finance and Ops portfolios. This year I'm the Funding Commissioner, which means I'm responsible for allocating over $350,000 from 9 different student fee funds. I've worked a lot in both portfolios with tangible results vis-a-vis streamlining processes and making documents and just processes a lot easier for both clubs and services, including acquiring a new software development platform for granting. If elected, I would like to be able to continue doing this work in this portfolio through 4 platform points and more of a project plan. So firstly, I'd like to continue to streamline our financial technology in line with other resources, and just overall contribute to the sustainability of our short and long-term operations. All right, and then the other, I'd also like to incentivize financial competencies and professional development for club and service executives so that we're streamlining processes both on the club side and also administrative burden on our admin and our accounting team. And I'd like to create a website. Okay, I'm sorry. And I'd like to create a website that has all of our financial resources as well as snapshots of our expenditures so students can be engaged in where funds are allocated.
Thank you very much. So with that, we have one question for you from the incumbent, which is, actually this one came from the live stream. The incumbent did not send us any questions. So the question you will be getting is, will you address the McGill Symphonic Band Club's lost $6,000 sheet music due to the club space confusion?
As far as I know, that's not something that I've been directly involved in due to the fact that that's more of a legal matter that insurance is dealing with, and I've more just heard it in passing. But I do think that if this is still an ongoing issue by the time I assume the role, I will make sure to consult adequately with both the club itself and then also our insurance departments and legal teams to see what we can do to replace the sheet music.
Thank you very much. Are there any audience questions out there for Risha? Don't be shy.
Finance is fun.
All right. Seeing none, and because you are an exceptional candidate that did not receive incoming questions,
I'm just going to ask a question because nobody asked a question.
Great.
It's very generic. How are you going to use the money better?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things I think that we can do when it comes to our resource allocation. Specifically, I guess looking at us contrasted with other student associations across Canada, we have the highest number of execs, but not the highest number of undergrad student bodies and not the highest student fees either. So I wonder often we pay a lot of money for overheads and we're not really provisioning service as well as we want to. So I'd really like to look into what we can do to do an overall organizational restructure to see if it can be more sustainable. And then I think on the other end, it's also a bit part of my platform, but I think integrating systems that will, I guess, be a bit, it'll be a transition process in the beginning, both in terms of cost as well as training. But in the long term, I hope that doing some of those transitions to things that I guess other nonprofits of our size use will help us. That's bad ending, but.
Thank you. Are there any other audience questions? We have time for one more. All right. Seeing none, if you'd like to move into your closing statement, I'll give you 1.5 minutes for it.
Awesome. Well, I guess you've heard a lot about what I've done in this portfolio, but I think what sets me apart from clearly my other opponents is my experience outside of SMU. So I've had a range of nonprofit and governance and policy development experience. I currently am the vice president of a national nonprofit where I'm responsible for the operational and legal matters, where we serve foster youth in and from care. I've also been lucky enough to serve on provincial and regional government bodies, doing everything from community consultation, strategic planning, to working on a $450 million child and youth mental health funding model. And I think having experience in many different facets and organizational structures and bureaucracies with, I guess, similarities to McGill administration will help me with more of the HR and our legal side of our of the finance portfolio, and I'm hoping that I can bring, I guess, my range of experience to integrate systems here at McGill, so we can be, I guess, competing with our peer institutions.
Great. Thank you very much. All right, so with that, I'd like to invite up the only candidate for VP Operations, Anuradha Malik. So Anuradha, you will have 1.5 minutes for an introductory speech whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you. So just to start off, I'd like to say my name is Anuradha. I'm a third-year computer science and music student at McGill, and I'd just like to summarize my platform a little to preface this. So I have 3 main parts of my platform that I focused on. There's sustainability, building operations, and revenue-generating operations. So one of the big emphases of my platform is sustainability, because I think that's a great venture that Sasha started going into last year. I have several projects listed on my platform that I want to work on in terms of sustainability that involve collaboration with the McGill Office of Sustainability, as well as bringing back ventures that existed previously that didn't quite work out last year, such as the Sustainability Roundtable, the Environmental Commission. In terms of building operations, I do want to place a large emphasis on receiving information from constituents through forums such as the Building Operations Management Committee, and looking at a number of different ideas that they may have come up with last year, and developing those further to benefit the aesthetic space and utilize the space that we have in the SMU building. And in terms of revenue generating operations, I'd like to continue to work with GERTS, SADIES, as well as mini courses to continue those ventures. So in terms of GERTS, I have a number of ideas, including continuing the existence of pharmacy, which was started this year, as well as continuing to emphasize the strong institutional knowledge of the permanent staff that we have at McGill, and continuing strong training to encourage active bystander culture, to collaborate with GERTS in that sense.
Great, thank you very much. So with that, we'll move into the incumbent questions. You'll have 1 minute to respond. So the first question from Sasha is, what do you plan on changing with respect to our relationship with the McGill Office of Sustainability?
All right, so just as I mentioned at the beginning, I plan to, there's a number of projects that I've spoken to from that were mentioned to me by representatives from the McGill Office of Sustainability, and I think that by utilizing this connection, we can distribute these projects among different faculties and different representatives in terms of the environment and sustainability, for example, the Sustainability Events Index. And I think that using the recreation of the Environmental Commission would be a great way to disperse this among the McGill population.
Great, thank you. So the second incumbent question from Sasha will be, many of the McGill University committees run by facilities often switch between French and English. Do you have proficiency in spoken French? And if not, how do you plan to prepare yourself to work in a bilingual environment?
So I have a working proficiency of French. I've been speaking it I've been learning it for 6 or 7 years, and I started McGill, here at McGill, I started French lessons, continue to practice French, so I do have a working proficiency enough to have a professional relationship with any of the committees that may work alongside operations, and I am planning on continuing on working on my French until I do enter the position.
Thank you. So now we have for you one live stream question, which is, what will you do to make Sadie's more successful revenue-wise? Will there be as big a focus in maintaining the SRC, or will you consider bringing back in vendors?
I'm sorry, bringing back?
Vendors.
Okay, thank you. So I do, as I mentioned before, a lot of the plans that Sasha had for Sadie's last year in terms of the aesthetic reworking of the advertising had a positive impact on Sadie's. So I do plan to continue working on what Sasha did in terms of increasing revenue for Sadie's and turning it around. I do think that student involvement in Sadie's is important. However, in addition to that, I do think that vendors and permanent staff are an important input into Sadie's due to, like I mentioned, the institutional knowledge that they bring, and being able to use that institutional knowledge to carry on the turning around of Sadie's as has begun last year.
Excellent, thank you. So I believe that's all the questions. Actually, we have time for one more. So regarding mini courses, what new courses would you have in mind? Which courses would you change? And do you have any ideas for new mini course workshops?
So in terms of mini courses, in addition, so I, again, through speaking to constituents is something, obviously, I want to gauge interest in certain courses. So a couple of ideas that I've had through speaking to constituents was, for example, dance workshops, and a lot of the projects that were spoken about with the Building and Operations Management Committee last year were regarding things that may enhance workshops like this, for example, movable mirrors. And in addition to this, there's going to be a reworking of the management of mini courses, which may help enhance this program further and spread it throughout the McGill community.
Thank you very much. With that, we'll move on to your closing statement. You have 1.5 minutes.
All right, so again, just for my closing statement, I wanted to quickly mention that I didn't mention in my opening that briefly want to mention the experience I've had that'll contribute to my working of the operations position. And I just wanted to mention that I've had extensive experience in operations and logistics in terms of Model UN. I've worked in the organizational committee of the conference for 2 years now. Furthermore, I do want to emphasize that one of my big passions in terms of operation is sustainability, and I started working on a number of large sustainability projects from the 11th grade onwards, and a lot of them are mentioned in my platform if you want to read them. So I just wanted to say that a lot of the passion and drive that I have towards operations and sustainability has started a long time ago, and I plan to dedicate my attention to everything that I mentioned in my platform and what I speak to in terms of with the constituents to do whatever I can with this position and shape it in a positive way for the McGill community.
Thank you very much. All right. So with that, we're actually going to take a 10 to 15 minute break. Pizza should be here within a few minutes. And yeah. So I'll let you guys know when we're starting again.
My name is Jamark Earl. I'm a U2 student studying saxophone performance at the Schulich School of Music. Over the past few years, I've been involved in numerous organizations which have given me the qualifications I believe are necessary to be your 2017-2018 SMU VP Student Life. My platform deals extensively with three main parts, the first of which being training your faculty executives in mental health first aid, which I believe will decrease the stigma, will help to decrease the stigma about talking about mental health, as well as providing an additional resource for students to go to. The second part is more student-led campaigns. I believe that when you see something done by your students, it provides more of an opportunity for you to engage with and listen to them. And then lastly, I have a few personal projects which I believe will help to improve the overall quality of student life, which I want, there are three. The first one is laying the groundwork for having a mental health minor option available to students. The second one is, sorry, the pizza was really good. I forgot a few of my points. They're on my platform, but yeah, you can find them there.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. So with that, we'll move into the incumbent questions. So they were sent to me by Elaine Patterson. One sec. Let me just pull them up. So, the job of VP Student Life ranges from administrative tasks to providing support for students' group executives. One of the components of this position that I didn't necessarily expect was that I would find that I would have to facilitate conflict mediation between student group executives. What procedures would you take in the event that a student group executive team needs your help with a conflict?
Could you repeat the last part of it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What procedure would you take in the event that a student group executive team needs your help with a conflict?
All right. So in dealing with conflict resolution, I've had multiple experiences throughout my life, and especially the past few years at McGill. And what I believe helps or is beneficial in dealing with student conflicts is first sitting down with both parties and acting as a mediator towards them. So that could just be a meeting, and then you have both parties of the student group where you ask them to say what the conflict is, just so that if it gets out of hand, you're there to mediate, and then working towards asking them what they want from the other party and what the other party wants from them. And I think that when someone is there to help mediate the conversation, it helps to listen to someone else, because when you're in a conflict with someone, oftentimes what they say just goes in one ear and out the other. So I think acting as a mediator would be the measure I would take.
Excellent. Thank you. The second question from Elaine is, it would appear that so this is her question. It would appear that your campaign is primarily based on personal projects and mental health. Within the first few months of this position, I quickly learned that providing institutional support for over 250 student groups on campus is the largest part of this portfolio. When you are pressed for time in this position, because you will be, what do you plan on prioritizing, and how will you prioritize your tasks?
So this is dealing with the first few months?
No, just in general, how will you prioritize your tasks, and how will you deal with prioritizing various parts of your portfolio?
So as you said, my platform deals extensively with mental health and personal projects. Because the projects are personal projects, it's not a huge, it won't be, in terms of organizing what's most important, it's it comes third next to mental health and dealing with clubs and services. So in the first few months, I know a lot of the job is going to be dealing with clubs and services. We have activities nights, so I'm going to have to be responding to a lot of emails, talking to a lot of the clubs and service representatives. So I think that so dealing with the mental health and the clubs and services, because those are two of the most important parts of the job. I think those will be my main points, and that's what I'll prioritize over my personal projects.
Great, thank you. Are there any audience questions out there? All right, seeing none, I'll ask one more question from the incumbent. So, as everyone knows, SSMU executives are extremely busy with administrative tasks, personal portfolio projects, and, on occasion, damage control and crisis management. Additionally, providing emotional support can be extremely draining for an individual. How do you see yourself as an executive being able to devote time to provide emotional support to students in addition to the other responsibilities of the portfolio? So again, relating more to time management.
I believe this is a skill I've developed within the last couple years. As a floor fellow, I spend a lot of time helping students and like developing relationships with them, as well as dealing with school. I'm a MUSA executive and like a lot of other projects I have. So I would say I'm very strong with time management skills, and I think that like the experience I've gained within the past few years will be like beneficial in dealing with this.
Great, thank you. So with that, we'll hear out your closing statement.
Okay. Sorry.
You'll have 1.5 minutes.
Like as you've noticed and as you've said, my platform deals extensively with mental health, and this is because that I've seen firsthand how detrimental it can be towards students on campus and just in your daily lives. If you were to think of mental health as an equation, I think that what's missing from this equation is the student input. And if elected as your student SSMU VP Student Life, I plan on ensuring that student input will be heard within the administration, because I don't believe that they're being transparent in how they're working towards benefiting our students. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much. So with that, I'd give a big round of applause to Jamark. So just before everyone leaves, a few closing remarks. So the polling period starts at 9 a.m. on March 13th and goes until March 16th at 3 p.m. You should log on to smu.simplyvoting.com. That's where you can submit your votes. The announcements will be at Gertz at 5 p.m. On March 16th. And this live stream recording should be posted and available on YouTube later. So anyway, thank you guys for watching, and thank you so much to TVM for being here and recording this event. Great. All right. Bye, everyone.